Hi, welcome to Books with Lexi. Today I'm going to tell you 6 books that changed my reading taste. If you are new here, don't forget to subscribe. I post 2 to 3 videos a week and host reading sprints as well. Today I'm going to talk to you about 6 books that I read that made me discover that I liked certain things in books. It made me pick up other books that are similar, and they really got me to question my reading tastes and kind of change for the better, in my opinion. So the first book I'm going to talk about is the book that I credit with getting me back into reading. I was a huge reader as a kid, and then in middle school, high school, and college, it kind of dropped off because I was super involved in other things. In my senior year of college, I had a 45-minute drive one way twice a day. So I decided that I wanted to listen to an audiobook. And this is not anything I would do now, but I only had 1 credit, so I picked the longest book I could find that looked interesting, and that was 11/22/63 by Stephen King. This is my favorite book from this author. I have not read a lot of his stuff. A lot of it I don't know if I plan on reading, but this is one of my all-time favorite books. Before reading this, I had never really read sci-fi. As a kid, I read a lot of mysteries and I guess adventure type things. And this book really heavily deals with time travel and also kind of historical fiction, which I don't love all of, but weirdly enough, some of my all-time favorite books have historical fiction elements in them. So maybe that's something I need to explore more. I'm just going to read the back to you. A high school English teacher in a Maine town, Jake Epping is stunned by a gruesome, enthralling essay penned by one of his GED students, janitor Harry Dunning. 50 years ago, Harry somehow survived his father's sledgehammer slaughter of his entire family. But an even more bizarre secret comes to light when the owner of the local diner enlists Jake on the mission that has become his obsession to prevent the Kennedy assassination. By stepping through a portal in the diner's storeroom, Jake finds himself in Jolie, Texas in the era of Ike and Elvis, of big American cars, sock hops, and cigarette smoke. But all turns in the road lead to a troubled loner named Lee Harvey Oswald. History is about to be rewritten and become heart-stoppingly suspenseful. I loved the time travel elements in here. There's a romance in here, which I did not know that I needed, but I needed it. I just really love this book, and this made me consider the fact that I might like sci-fi books. And because of this book, I ended up picking another book up that drastically changed my opinion on books. Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This is another one of my all-time favorite books, and this made me realize that I love the combination of sci-fi and thrillers. Whenever I picked this up, I had been reading a lot of mystery / thrillers, so I already knew I liked thrillers, but I had never really considered the idea of putting sci-fi and thriller together, and this does it so well. Are you happy with your life? Those are the last words Jason Desson hears before the masked abductor knocks him unconscious, before he awakens to find himself strapped to a gurney surrounded by strangers in hazmat suits, before a man Jason's never met smiles down at him and says, "Welcome back, my friend." In this world he's woken up to, Jason's life is not the one he knows. His wife is not his wife, his son was never born, and Jason is not an ordinary college physics professor, but a celebrated genius who has achieved something remarkable, something impossible. Is it this life or the other that's the dream? And even if the home he remembers is real, how can Jason possibly make it back to the family he loves? The answers lie in the journey more wondrous and horrifying than anything he could have imagined, one that will force him to confront the darkest parts of himself even as he battles a terrifying, seemingly unbeatable foe. From the author of the best-selling Wayward Pines trilogy, which I love, Dark Matter is a brilliantly plotted tale that is at once sweeping and intimate, mind-bendingly strange and profoundly human, a relentlessly surprising sci-fi thriller about choices, paths not taken, and how far we'll go to claim the lives we dream of. I love the sci-fi stuff in here. It is so interesting. It was tense. There's a little bit of romance in this one as well, which that's not the part that I loved about this, but it's really interesting. And this book really made me interested in sci-fi even more, knowing that it could be combined with a thriller. I do want to clarify, obviously sci-fi thrillers were a thing before this book, but this is just my first experience with it and how it changed what books I pick up and what I like. The next book I'm going to talk about is Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This book made me realize that there was more to the thriller genre than domestic thrillers. Whenever I've got back into reading more, almost all of the thrillers that I were picking up were domestic thrillers because that is what was super popular at the time. That's a lot of what was being published. That's a lot of what people were reading and liking, and I did enjoy it. But this one really introduced me to like a new subgenre of thrillers, more suspenseful, I guess more community focused instead of couple focused. I want to hear about people's problems, but not people's relationship problems. This was so interesting to me. It was tense, it was suspenseful. I love the twist in here. I would not be surprised if this twist is inspired by real things. No visitors, no nights spent away from the apartment, no disturbing the other residents, all of whom are rich or famous or both. These are the only rules for Jules Larson's new job as an apartment sitter in the Bartholomew, one of Manhattan's most glamorous and secretive buildings. Recently heartbroken and just plain broke, Jules is captivated by the splendor of her surroundings and accepts the terms, ready to leave her past life behind. As she gets to know the residents and the staff of the Bartholomew, Jules finds herself drawn to fellow apartment sitter Ingrid, who comfortingly reminds her of her sister who vanished 8 years ago. When Ingrid confides that the Bartholomew is not what it seems and that the dark history hidden beneath its gleaming facade is starting to frighten her, Jules brushes it off as a harmless ghost story until the next day when Ingrid disappears. Searching for the truth about Ingrid's disappearance, Jules digs deeper into the Bartholomew's sordid past and the mysteries kept within its walls. What she discovers pits Jules against the clock as she races to unmask a killer, expose the building's hidden secrets, and escape a dream apartment that has quickly turned into a nightmare. This really opened a lot of doors for me. Now my favorite thrillers are thrillers that are like this, that feature creepy houses, that feature like random people going missing, and that are primarily not about people and their domestic life. Next, No Exit by Taylor Adams. This taught me that I love thrillers that are just thrillers. This is one of the most stressful books I have ever read. The atmosphere and the tension and the suspense, I was heavy breathing. This book made my heart race. Like, this really taught me that I want to be stressed while reading books. This really does not focus on the mystery in here. A lot of times you know what's going on. We're not watching our main character try to solve a mystery or figure things out. She's just trying to survive and help someone else survive. A determined young woman must unmask and outwit a vicious psychopath in this tense and clever tale of suspense. On her way to Utah to see her dying mother, college student Darby Thorne gets caught in a fierce blizzard in the Colorado Rockies. With the roads impassable, she's forced to wait out the storm at a remote highway rest stop with no cell phone reception. Inside are some vending machines, a coffee maker, and 4 complete strangers. Desperate to find a signal to call home, the exhausted young art student goes back out into the storm and makes a horrifying discovery. In the back of the van, parked next to her car, is a little girl locked in an animal crate. Who is the child? Why has she been taken? And how can Darby save her? There is no way to call for help and no way out. One of her fellow travelers is a kidnapper, but which one? Trapped in an increasingly dangerous situation on the edge of civilization, with a child's life and her own on the line, Darby must find a way to break the girl out of the van and escape. But who can she trust? I love that this was a thriller first. I love the suspense in here. I love the isolated setting. I feel like that really adds to the story. That's another thing that this book taught me. So this is another book that changed how I decide what thrillers I'm going to read. Okay, I talked about 2 sci-fi books, 2 thriller books, and now I have 2 horror books for you. The first one is the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. This made me realize that I weirdly like books with scenes that disturb me enough that they stick in my brain forever. I think about a scene in this book probably every day. I also love that this was like darkly funny. It's not one that I was like laughing out loud, but it's still funny. So I definitely realized that while reading this book, and that is something that I do seek out now. Patricia Campbell's life has never felt smaller. Her husband is a workaholic, her teenage kids have their own lives, her senile mother-in-law needs constant care, and she's always a step behind on her endless to-do list. The only thing keeping her sane is her book club, a close-knit group of Charleston women united by their love of true crime. Then James Harris walks into her life during the summer of 1993. He makes her feel things she hasn't felt in years, but when children on the other side of town go missing, Patricia wonders if he's connected. Is he a Brad Pitt, a Bundy, or something much worse? This is one of the first horror books that I read, and it's interesting because this does deal a lot with like domestic stuff, which I don't love in thrillers, but I do like more in horror. So it's interesting how that works. This kind of introduced me into the genre. It made me realize I like books that have some elements of comedy in them. And it also made me realize that I like horror that has a little bit of mystery in it. The last book I'm going to talk to you about that completely changed things for me is Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. This book was not the first horror book I read, but this made me obsessed. I did a vlog like very early on in my channel where I read horror books for a week, and that was really my first experience reading horror more than like every once in a while. I loved the psychological aspects in here, which is another thing that I realized that I really love in horror. I liked the slasher aspects. I thought it was a lot of fun while being disturbing. And it was just super interesting to think about. We thought we'd play a fun prank on her, and now most of us are done. One last laugh for the summer as it winds down. One last prank just to scare a friend. Bringing a mannequin into a theater is just some harmless fun, right? Until it wakes up, until it starts killing. Luckily, Sawyer has a plan. He'll be a hero. He'll save everyone to the best of his ability. He'll kill as many people as he needs to so he can save the day. That's the thing about heroes. Sometimes you have to become a monster first. I love that this is short. That's another thing that I realized while reading this. I love horror novellas. I don't want too much of the story. I don't want too much backstory. I don't want too much like of the situation being drawn out. I just want something that is quick and interesting but also fun, and this really gave that to me. And I kind of credit this book for really starting my horror reading journey. So those are 6 of the books that I really feel changed, books that I decided to pick up. It made me realize what I like in books. It really introduced me down paths that led me to some of my favorite books. I love all of these books so desperately because of the books themselves and also what they did for my reading journey. I'd love to know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, and also what books you think really changed your opinion on reading. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye!